think the iPad mini 6 may well be one of the most loved iPads that Apple has ever put out. It only takes a quick search on YouTube or on Instagram or even over on TikTok to see people really big it up and rave about it. And for a lot of people out there, it's even part of their everyday carry. And I have to go against the grain here because I've never actually been a huge fan of the iPad mini, even with the updated design they introduced last time, which looks absolutely gorgeous and it has all the new chips and everything. I still found it kind of because I use the iPhone Pro Max. I feel like I have that screen size kind of covered in my pocket at all times, and I really like the bigger iPads for all the extra functionality they bring. But after going back to the iPad mini for around 2 weeks or so, I wanted to explain why I was totally wrong about it. And I also wanted to see if it's still worth getting in 2023. So let's get right into it. Okay, so what started off this video in many ways was an Instagram post I did the other day. And all it was some photos of the iPad mini, but I just said, is this the best iPad? And what do you use it for? And I have never had such a massive response from everyone that follows me over there. The amount of outpouring of love for the iPad mini was huge, and so many people hit on all of these same things, which were really interesting. 3 separate people mentioned that they use it in the film and TV industry instead of paper, and it's much more useful for things like call sheets and making notes and all those sorts of things. I had loads of students come out and say that it's the perfect small device for taking notes in lectures or in class, and it's not too distracting when they do get it out. Lots of people who are into business as well just mentioned that it's the perfect device to take with them into meetings or to slide across the room and show people something quickly if they're doing video reviews or things like that. And the overarching message which came across in that Instagram post is people are a lot less confused about what this iPad can do. No one's picking it up to do any kind of serious work as such or do loads and loads of things. They're using it as a replacement for what they'd take normally. So if they had a diary or a small notebook, they can actually use the iPad mini instead and get loads more functionality out of it. And I think that's what makes it so popular. It's way less confusing in a really confusing iPad lineup. And that does bring me to the iPad lineup as a whole. It's really big at the moment, and if you're just trying to get into iPads, it's quite a confusing selection of products with one outweighing the other in terms of pricing and in terms of functionality. But the iPad mini seems to kind of sit on its own. It's not making any lofty promises about being the ultimate productivity tool, and it's also not saying this is the budget one for students and for people who just want it for something else. And it's got the higher end features which people really like too. It's got the Apple Pencil 2 support, which snaps to the side and charges up just like the bigger iPads, which is ideal. It's also got USB-C as well, so you can connect loads of stuff to it and it works how you'd expect it to. And loads of people seem to really love the fact that this is just an iPad. It's not trying to be a laptop replacement or a desktop replacement. This is the original idea of the iPad, which was the go between the two. When you don't specifically need the power or the complexity of an actual computer, you can just use the iPad. Let's talk performance quickly as well, because as we know, this is a 2-year-old product now, so you'd think it may be getting long in the tooth, but it's actually still rocking the Apple A14 chip, which was current in the iPhone 13, and they're still using it in the base iPhone 14 models, and there really is nothing to worry about here. This iPad performs really nicely, and I'm pretty certain that it's going to for the next 3 or 4 years as well. Using heavier apps like Lightroom and LumaFusion all work really nicely on here, although I probably wouldn't spend a lot of time editing video on the iPad mini, but editing photos is a really lovely experience, and doing things like taking notes and lighter tasks are absolutely fine. This iPad still flies, and it's really nice that the A14 chip is clearly holding up well. And it's also a little powerhouse for gaming too. The form factor and size of the mini just make it perfect, especially for games like Pokemon Unite or Diablo Immortal when you've got a lot of on-screen controls. They're big enough to tap without blocking any of the action, which you do sometimes on iPhone, but on the iPad mini, you just have a bit more space to do it with. And it's nice and light too, which obviously just makes it a great overall content consumption device. The only time where I've seen it show its limitations is actually due to the RAM size rather than the processor. The iPad mini 6 has 4 GB of RAM, and for general tasks, that's absolutely fine. But if you're using the more professional apps like opening up DaVinci Resolve, which is like a really big video editor, you'll get a small pop-up menu and it will just say you can only edit in 1080p on this device, not in 4K, because there's a RAM deficiency. But considering this is a mini, I can't expect you to want to sit down here and edit videos for hours on end anyway. But for all other tasks, the iPad mini's been a really great experience, and if you are worried about doing those bigger things like editing loads of videos and stuff like that, then the mini probably isn't the way to go anyway. As mentioned at the start of this video, I didn't actually get along with the iPad mini that well. And I'm in a really strange position because I test iPads for this channel and talk about them a lot. I often have access to pretty much all of them. So my attention pretty much always goes to those because they're a bit more feature rich. And I'd always kind of disregarded the mini because I just thought, well, I'll just use my phone for anything like that. But I started to really embrace it. I started putting it in my bag and making it part of my everyday carry. And I started to really enjoy it. I usually make a call whether I'm gonna need my iPad or my laptop to take with me, but now I always put this in my bag because it's so small. And the knock-on effect of that is because I can, I've actually started using it more. I'm taking more notes than I have done before. I've actually started playing some games again on iPad, which I haven't done for the longest time. And I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, but I've been really enjoying it for scrolling on TikTok and Instagram because you get that bigger screen experience without having that weird kind of stretched iPad app looking thing. It actually looks okay on here, and scrolling through Instagram and even editing reels and things like that on here is a nice experience, and I've really enjoyed it. Something else which I've noticed for me personally, because my hands are quite big, is the keyboard size on here is kind of perfect for me to really hammer away the words. I don't feel like I need a keyboard extension. I can just literally smash away and write down everything I need to really fast, which has been something I didn't realize I liked until I started doing it. Not to mention it is that perfect size for content consumption. I can fit this in one hand, so if I do want to read something on Kindle or if I want to browse the web for hours on end, doing it like this is absolutely fine. So yeah, I think I've been completely wrong about the iPad mini. You know, using it as a mini device rather than trying to do bigger things of it has just been fantastic, and I've been really enjoying using it. Obviously, nothing is perfect, and there's definitely a few things here which Apple could do to make the next version of this really good. And I'm actually separating this into realistic updates and like kind of unrealistic ones because I think Apple will absolutely do some of these, but I don't think they'll do other things. One thing is the battery life. This could absolutely do with a bit of a bigger battery in it. I would really like to see a better screen on here in terms of brightness. It's actually fine for indoor use, but outside it can just get a little bit too dim. I would also love to see Apple bump the minimum storage. 64 gigabytes is just not enough anymore, so jumping that up to 128 gig would be a great starting point. And the final one in the realistic category for me would be to get the RAM up to 6 gigabytes, just to give it a bit of headroom, because it feels like we may already be at that 4 gigabyte ceiling at this point, so giving it just a little boost there would be really good. In terms of unrealistic updates or things which I just don't think Apple would do, but I would love to see at least, is 120 Hz and an OLED screen. I just don't think we're gonna get that on the Mini. If you want that, you're gonna have to jump up to the Pro models. Face ID as well would be really awesome, but I don't think that's going to come either. We're going to stick with the fingerprint scanner on the top. And I don't think the chip will go to the M1 or the M2 versions either. I'd like to be wrong about that, but I don't think they will. I think they'll put in an older iPhone processor or an A16 or whatever comes next into the updated one. And on that note, I don't think we'll get Stage Manager or external monitor support or anything like that on these smaller iPads. They're reserved for the bigger ones, and as much as I'd love to see it, I just don't think we will. Hello, Editing Tom here, and I just wanted to mention the jelly screen effect, which is something people complained about last time, which is when you're using the iPad mini and you're scrolling, you can kind of see some sort of jellying on the screen. And the fact that I'm making this clip after I filmed the entire video should tell you everything you need to know about it. It's not a big issue at all, and I didn't even notice it, and I'm coming from the 120 Hz iPad Pro. It'd be cool if they sorted it out for the next one, but honestly, unless you're super used to 120 Hz absolutely everywhere and like the perfect screens, you're just not going to notice. So the overarching question of this video is the iPad mini still worth getting in 2023? And I think the answer to that is a pretty much universal yes. This is still a fantastic little product, and by the looks of it, it doesn't look like it's going anywhere soon or being updated soon. I've checked all the rumor sites and it looks like the earliest update for the iPad mini will be 2024. So if you're thinking about grabbing an iPad mini, then getting one now is still fine. Although I hope they don't release one in the next week and I'll look like an idiot. Anyway, that pretty much wraps up this video on the iPad mini. I hope you enjoyed it. If you are using the iPad mini, let me know in the comments below what you're using it for, or if there's any use cases which you think are awesome, which I haven't checked out. I love hearing what you have to say. And as always, I will see you all in the next one.